Good evening. Welcome to the Big Story. I'm Regina Lay.
I'm Gretchen Ho.
And I'm Pauline Verzosa.
Tonight's Big Stories. The Agriculture Department malts declaring a food security emergency in light of the continued increase in the price of basic goods, especially of rice.
Manila and Beijing take the diplomacy route again and kick off another high-level maritime dialogue on the South China Sea. Both agree to revive Coast Guard cooperation.
And U.S. Secretary of State nominee Marco Rubio calls China the most potent and dangerous adversary to the United States and says Beijing should stop messing with Taiwan and the Philippines.
Have you been to the supermarket lately? Well, I have. I go nearly every day. So if you, like me, you would know that the price of a lot of goods and a lot of food items, particularly rice, are through the roof these days. So one suggestion that the Agriculture Department is now considering is to declare a food security emergency.
What exactly is that? Under this intervention, the National Food Authority will release its reserve stock to boost supply, cope with demand, and eventually pull prices down.
And as an added measure, the DA is thinking of a price cap, maximum suggested retail prices, not just on imported premium rice, but on all varieties of the grain. Here's tonight's big story. Eden used to buy 25 kilos of rice on a supply run to the Pasig City market. But these days, she can only manage to take home 20 kilos at the most due to rising prices of the staple and a budget stuck at 1,000 pesos. How does she stretch this amount for her family's food for a week or two at a time?
Ano lang, budget lang.
The Department of Agriculture acknowledges a quite extraordinary increase in prices of rice and other food items and is already planning to declare a food security emergency. This idea came from the National Price Coordinating Council. Under the amended rice tariffication law, the DA chief can make this declaration in the event of shortage in supply and exceptional surges in prices. Once a food security emergency is enforced, the National Food Authority will be permitted to release its rice reserves to the market, which could influence prices and hopefully make them cheaper. The agriculture chief, though, is still on the fence.
Once it comes to my table, the chances is we will declare para ma-release namin yung stocks ng NFA.
The NFA has around 300 to 400,000 sacks of rice that need to be sold. This is supply that's been in warehouses for at least 2 months.
Harvest season is coming, so kung puno ang warehouse namin, hindi kami makapagbili sa mga farmers sa maayos na presyo. Hindi na ibig sabihin aging lang yan, no?
Initially, the DA plans to sell NFA rice at 36 pesos per kilo to local governments and other agencies. Retailers, though, will most likely have a markup of 2 pesos to that price. In March, the DA hopes it can lower the selling price further to 35 pesos per kilo. Meanwhile, starting tomorrow, the Agriculture Department is rolling back the price of 25% broken grains being sold in Kadiwa stores under the Rice for All program. Then on Monday, January 20, the DA will start implementing the 58 peso maximum suggested retail price for imported premium rice.
Bala ko maging 55 na lang yan. After another 2 weeks, maybe maging 52 na lang yan. Kung bumaba pa world prices, pwede maging 50 na lang yan.
With these interventions, the DA hopes to be able to implement maximum SRP on all types of rice sooner than later.
All right, let's dive into this issue a little bit more. Joining us tonight, we have Department of Agriculture Spokesperson, Assistant Secretary Arnel de Mesa. Welcome to the Big Story. Asek de Mesa, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, good evening. Good evening, everyone.
Asek, let's start from a big picture point of view. Tell us what the idea is behind this food security emergency and how did we get to this point where you think you have to, the only option is to declare a food security emergency? Food security emergency, that's right.
Yeah, we must remember that as per the amendment of the rice tariffication law under Republic Act 12708, only when there is an emergency can NFA sell its stock. So the only mandate left for NFA is to have the buffer stocking of locally produced rice. Now, the NFA since last year has bought significant volume of rice to a tune of 300,000 metric tons, or equivalent of 6 million bags. Now, the National Price Coordinating Council has approved the resolution since there are two possible ways that the food security emergency can be declared and approved by the Secretary of the Department of Agriculture. One is if there is insufficiency in supply, or if there is an extraordinary increase in prices of rice. We have sufficient volume of rice at the moment, even though we have low at 4.78 million metric tons of rice. So since the effectivity of Executive Order 62 since July of last year, effectively bringing down the tariff rate from 35 to 15%, we haven't felt the decrease in the prices of rice that we expect. With that, the National Price Coordinating Council saw it fit to recommend again to the Department of Agriculture the approval of such resolution.
So out of those two variables, there is sufficient supply, but you're noticing an extraordinary increase in the price of the staple. To what do you attribute this?
Most likely, some of because there is not so much regulation in our retail market. Rice are being sold. Even though if it is 25% broken, sometimes it can be sold as 5% broken. So there is problem in labeling. So together with the implementation of the maximum suggested retail price, the Secretary also recommended to remove the label of premium and special so that our consumers can really buy the rice according to each category, and we can avoid some confusion, because some of the rice being sold in the market are not of the category the way it should be.
So that means the problem is with the retail stores. Are you saying that?
Part of the problem is with the retail.
And apart from that, what else could be the root of the seemingly stable rice prices at that level? We are at 40 plus pesos for the regular rice. Ano kaya yung punot dulo niyan? Bukod po dun sa iniiba-iba nga po yung binibenta, yung labeling ng mga bigas.
Actually, during the last Quintacom hearing, some of the congressmen, the honorable congressmen, already recommended to the National Bureau of Investigation to really look into the matter and investigate where along the value chain of the rice we can attribute this seemingly cause of the increase of prices.
Okay. Under the food security emergency, the NFA can now sell rice to LGUs and agencies at a lower price. Am I correct? What else happens under this food security emergency?
On the part of the Department of Agriculture, actually that's our main agenda. Again, as mentioned by the Secretary, we have, NFA actually have accumulated significant volume of rice, and the next harvest season is already coming, and they have really to dispose of this volume sooner or later.
How much should we expect rice to be sold at when those stocks are released into the market?
At the moment, the Secretary already announced that NFA will sell it at 36 pesos per kilo, which will give LGUs at least 2 pesos, and then we'll sell it at 38 pesos. And come late March or late February or early March, NFA can bring it down further to 33 pesos per kilo, and the LGUs can sell it now by then up to 35 pesos. So they can only put maximum 2 peso margin.
You have a 300,000 metric tons of supply. How long do you expect that to last?
It really depends on how much of the volume the LGUs and national government agencies can really take. Based on what we are looking now, we can sustain this program until the next harvest season.
Well, Asek, you did mention a significant amount of rice that the NFA still needs to sell. But how is the quality of this NFA rice at present? I mean, because this supply has been in warehouses for at least 2 months.
The definition of the aging stock that NFA can sell starts from 1 month before the technical definition of aging actually starts, which is 2 months. So the technical definition is 3 months. So 1 month prior is 2 months. So this is a very good quality of rice that NFA has.
Kasi alam naman po natin, masela ng mga Pilipino sa sa kanilang mga bigas. Sa pag sinabi nating kanin, kailangan masarap yan. And NFA actually parang nababalitaan noon na medyo matigas-tigas itong kalidad nito. Did we improve the sources or suppliers of the NFA rice?
Actually, what you are trying to mention was yung dati na NFA, because ang NFA kasi before ay nag-i-import ng talagang mga low-quality rice before. But now, because of the rice tarification law, lahat ng bigas at palay ng NFA are locally produced. So these are really good quality rice.
Asek, there's a few other things that are not clear to me about what this food security emergency is going to bring about. So are you only looking to sell NFA rice once this is declared, or are you looking to import more as well?
No. Again, as per the rice tarification law, we will import only if there's really a shortage. As I mentioned, there's no shortage yet of the staple. The only reason that the NPCC consider recommending food security emergency is because of the extraordinary increase in prices of the staple. So we will not resort into any further importation.
If this is if this takes off, if the program is incredibly successful and you deplete the NFA buffer stock, what happens during times of disaster? When there's actually when production will of course drop, and there might be an acute shortage of the crop.
There is enough again inventory on the part of NFA, and since again there is a upcoming harvest season by late February, March, and April, so we can be assured of enough stock even though there will be calamity or disaster.
As you mentioned a while ago, we were expecting to have the price go down because of the reduction in tariffs of the imported rice. I think that's 5 to 6 pesos dapat na bumaba yung presyo, but we haven't felt it, and the local rice millers have actually been complaining about this, saying that it will actually threaten the local supply of rice. Tingin niyo po ba hindi naging epektibo itong pagtanggal o pagbawas ng taripa sa bigas?
Kung titingnan natin, siguro kung hindi bumaba yung taripa, siguro mas mahal ang presyo ng bigas sa pamilihan. And you are correct, we also need to protect the local farmers and millers kasi hindi rin natin pwedeng masyadong ibaba ang presyo because at the end, pwedeng bumagsak din masyado ang farm gate price ng palay, locally speaking. And this might have an implication on the planting intention of our rice farmers. So the secretary and the whole department is really looking on carefully balancing these concerns coming from both the farmers and of the consumer.
Once the LGU has bought the NFA rice, what happens after that? I know under the Sagip-Saka Act, the LGUs are actually encouraged to go straight to the farmers to buy from them. Pero dito po, kung pagka kinuha na po nila yung NFA, paano po nila dadalhin yan sa merkado? Ibebenta po yan sa palengke? Sila na po ang magiging in charge dyan?
Actually, nasa LGU na yun kung paano nila gagawin yung bigas na mabibili nila sa NFA. Again, they can sell it at a maximum margin of additional 2 pesos they can do whatever doon sa, according doon sa ipapasa ng kanilang konseho. But on the part of DA, ang aming consideration is, again, for these stocks to be sold not only through the local government, but also through the national government and other agencies as per RA 1270.
Well, Asik, I also wanted to ask about the maximum SRP that the DA is recommending to be placed on imported rice. What is their basis for the computation of that? Because on the side of the retailers and wholesalers, actually, they are expressing concern that this could affect their profits. I mean, kasi nagbabayad pa po sila ng renta, yung mga tauhan nila. So, kumaga liliit yung profit nila with this maximum SRP.
Actually, there are at least 4 parameters that we are looking sa pag-set ng MSRP. One, of course, yung international market price ng bigas. Second will be the peso-dollar exchange rate, the tariff, and the cost of bringing the rice to the Philippines and shipping cost. But we have all this information, and actually, in-increase namin yung profit margin up to 10 pesos, which normally is 6 to 8 pesos. Again, to give an opportunity for all the retailers and wholesalers to give them ample time to release this rice to the market at eventually mabenta. And as mentioned by the Secretary, the department is really planning to review this periodically every week or every 2 weeks. And we're expecting it to be at the price range of 52 to 50 pesos in the next month or so.
Asik, doon naman po sa removal ng labels sa mga bigas, I believe the DA is looking to remove the premium and special labels. Any update po on that? What will it be changed to?
Alongside the implementation of MSRP, again, the Secretary is really prepared yung pag-alis talaga ng label ng premium, special, and lalo na doon sa mga sako. Kasi, again, nagkakaroon kasi ng confusion and yung mga retailers, pag na-brand kasi na premium at special, kahit na yung bigas, nakikita namin yung pag-ikot namin, sila 25% broken lamang at hindi ganun maganda. But pag nalagyan na nila ng premium at special, then parang nagkakaroon sila ng authority na lagyan na mas mataas sa presyo. So we want to remove that, and we want to see na meron lang na imported, local, and then how many percentage yung broken, and what type of price lang yun. So that yung standard ng retail will align with the standard na pinafalo sa international standard.
So why not crack down on the retailers harder instead of declaring a price, food price emergency, which to me sends a very alarmist kind of message to the rest of the world, right? That we're declaring such a thing. Why not crack down harder on the retailers, on their labeling, on the fact that some of them are profiteering and taking advantage of the situation?
Again, the concept of having the resolution on food security emergency is related only to the capacity of NFA to sell its stock. That's the only reason on the part of the department in seeking for that emergency declaration.
Because it needs an emergency declaration to be able to release its buffer stocks. Did we get that correct?
That is correct.
Yes. Okay. How much do we expect the NFA rice to be at the Kadiwa stores if we go there?
Actually, the NFA rice is being used to sell yung ating tinatawag na P29, the 29 peso rice for the vulnerable sectors.
29?
Aside from that, yeah, the 29 peso, this is the aging stock that's now being sold by NFA. That's the only way it's being sold. Right now, again, because of the huge volume of inventory of NFA, the only way it can be sold through the LGUs or any other means without calamity or any disaster is through a declaration of food security emergency.
And again, I might have missed this, but how long do you expect this to be in place?
Perhaps as long as the stock is already out.
That would take about a month, 2 months, 1 week?
Yeah, we'll check.
Okay. MSRP, maximum suggested retail price, you were talking about it with Pauline. I mean, there's a reason price caps generally don't work in a free market economy, right? How do you expect to enforce this?
Actually, again, this is not a price cap. A price cap, you set a
Yes, but-
definite price on any commodity.
Yes.
Maximum suggested retail price is just the amount that, in terms of retail, we should not be seeing any more prices within this range. It's not
Yes.
actually price
Yes,
cap
yes.
or price ceiling.
Yes, Asek, I understand the difference, but the point is that MSRP, if you're already talking about wayward retailers who mislabel rice, who take every opportunity to take advantage of by jacking up their prices, if you already are dealing with these kinds of retailers, then MSRP, without sanctions, without penalties, I mean, how do you expect them to abide by it?
At this time, again, the DA is not eyeing any penalty, but we are already coordinating with the Department of Trade Industry. They have the Fair Trade Enforcement Bureau, and then the local governments, again, we met with them earlier through the Metro Manila Council, and perhaps the other government agencies who have that power. The department has no power, again, to impose this kind of penalties. That's why we are closely coordinating with agencies who have this kind of authority or power.
So, for example, I'm a retailer and the MSRP is 58 pesos a kilo, and then I get caught selling it at 65. What happens to me then?
Again, that will be recorded and properly monitored, and there will be probably actions coming from the LGUs or the TCI.
So it's still down. The responsibility then lies with the LGU, is what you're saying.
Yes, not with the department.
Okay. And again, this is the food price emergency will be strictly for rice. Are we looking to declare such as well on other goods and commodities?
Right now, the only law that covers is a food security emergency, cover only rice. But then again, let's see if there's need for other commodities. But RA 12708 specifically mentioned only for rice.
Kasi yung kamatis po ay nababalitang napakataas din ng presyo. Ano po kaya yung
I
dahilan
couldn't even
doon?
find them yesterday at the supermarket.
For tomato naman, the main reason talaga last year, those areas na traditionally growing this kind of commodity were severely affected by a series of typhoons. These are regions 2, region 4A, 3, and the Bicol region. So about 45% reduction in the volume of tomato produced in the last 2 quarters last year. So talaga malaki yung naging kabawasan. Naka-apekto ng presyo going into January. But malaki na rin yung binaba ng presyo sa pag-iikot namin. From 300 peso last week or more than, ngayon nasa 140, 150 na lang. And the harvest is coming in by end January, February. So we can still expect the lowering of prices of tomato in the next coming days.
Okay. Well, we'll also be monitoring that. Thank you so much for talking to us tonight on the Big Story. DA spokesperson, spokesperson Arnel de Mesa.
Meantime, the Metro Manila Development Authority, or MMDA, is proposing the expansion of adjusted work hours in all government agencies to help ease rush hour traffic in Metro Manila. Under this proposal, work hours in state offices will now be from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. instead of the usual 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. shift. Recall that this scheme was implemented last year in Metro Manila LGUs and later adapted by other agencies such as NEDA and the DPWH. The MMDA plans to submit this recommendation to President Bongbong Marcos ahead of the rehabilitation of EDSA this year. If approved, almost 500,000 government employees could avoid the morning rush hour.
Sa mga nagko-commute, malaki rin ang epekto dahil hindi po sila nakapapasabay doon po sa rush hour foot traffic ng nasa pribadong sektor.
Meron na tayong traditional rush hour. Kung 1 hour ahead ka parate sa rush hour, you do not hit the peak of cars. So iwas ka ng 1 oras both sa pagpasok at pag-uwi.
Up next, Joe Biden delivers a speech from the Oval Office for the final time as president, with a warning that the so-called ultra-wealthy few are threatening U.S. democracy. The details when the big story returns. Keep it here. Welcome back. You're still watching the big story here on One News. The drone found in the waters of Masbate on December 30 was made in China. That's what the PNP Maritime Group has determined so far in its investigation. The PNP also confirmed that the drone is not commercially available and is manufactured for military or scientific use. But the Department of Defense stresses that there is no evidence that the drone was used by the Chinese in our waters. Based on the DND's own investigation, the drone is meant for data collection and was built to remain at an area for long periods. The Department of Foreign Affairs says if it's confirmed that the drone was used by China, it will file a formal protest. DFA Undersecretary Eduardo de Vega noted that express consent is required if any foreign nation wishes to conduct research in Philippine waters. More broadly, the Philippines and China have come back to the table to try to resolve issues in the West Philippine Sea. Foreign affairs officials of both countries convened for the 10th bilateral consultation mechanism meeting in Xiamen in the province of Fujian in China. Leading the Philippine delegation was DFA Undersecretary Teresa Lazaro, while the Chinese side was headed by Vice Foreign Minister Chen Xiaotong. Lazaro said she reaffirmed the Philippines' position on disputed waters, but also reiterated they firmly believe that despite the unresolved challenges and differences, there is genuine space for diplomatic and pragmatic cooperation in dealing with our issues in the South China Sea. The statement went on. The two sides exchanged views on the provisional understanding on the Philippines' rotation and reprovisioning Aurora missions to the BRP Sierra Madre in Ayungin Shoal, and agreed to continue its implementation to sustain the de-escalation of tensions without prejudice to respective national positions. The Philippines expressed serious concern regarding recent incidents in the South China Sea, particularly the activities of CCG 5901 and CCG 3103 in Philippine maritime zones that are inconsistent with the 1982 UNCLOS and the Philippine Maritime Zones Act. The two sides also agreed to revive a platform for Coast Guard cooperation. As mentioned, this is the 10th bilateral consultation mechanism meeting between the Philippines and China. The next one will be hosted here, though the date has not yet been set.
All good, except China is the most potent and dangerous adversary the United States has ever faced. That's according to Marco Rubio, Donald Trump's nominee for Secretary of State, who had his confirmation hearing last night. Rubio went so far as to accuse China of cheating its way to superpower status. Take a listen.
We welcome the Chinese Communist Party into the global order, and they took advantage of all of its benefits, and they ignored all of its obligations and responsibilities. Instead, they have repressed and lied and cheated and hacked and stolen their way into global superpower status. So if we don't change course, we are going to live in a world where much of what matters to us on a daily basis, from our security to our health, will be dependent on whether the Chinese allow us to have it or not.
Rubio, a known China hawk, spent most of his time during the 5-hour hearing warning of the consequences of what he called America's unbalanced relationship with Beijing. He says China will remain the biggest threat to America's prosperity in the 21st century. Rubio also vowed to ramp up support to deter any invasion of Taiwan, which China sees as a renegade province, calling Beijing's actions against Taiwan and the Philippines deeply destabilizing.
They are forcing us to take counteractions because we have commitments to the Philippines and we have commitments to Taiwan that we intend to keep. And so if they want to destabilize the relationship, or they want to at least create some pathway for stabilization of our relationship with them, even as we remain engaged in global competition and in some cases more adversarial than others, they really need to stop messing around with Taiwan and with the Philippines, because it's forcing us to focus our attention in ways we prefer not to have to. In the last 48 hours, there's this massive, I don't even know how to describe it, but this massive ship that the Chinese have built that's like headed towards the Philippines, and the Philippines feels threatened by it, rightfully so. We've seen this on a daily basis with the harassment and so forth, but on a daily basis. If, God forbid, there is some miscommunication or some inadvertent conflict emerges there, and we have obligations to them, the impact that will have on the entire globe, the impact that it will have on the entire globe is enormous.
Rubio is expected to easily win confirmation. He has support for both sides of the aisle. By that, I mean Democrats and Republicans, unlike some of the other Trump nominees for cabinet positions, so that's good. This is a very significant worldview from him because this is the first time we're hearing him speak openly about what he thinks the U.S. foreign policy should go.
Well, the fact that the Philippines was mentioned there in the same sentence as Taiwan, I think that bodes well for us, for what help we can get, and it signals where this new administration is going, which direction it's headed.
I mean, he went so far as to say that he will ramp up support for Taiwan to ensure that there's no invasion. And that's a departure from what Trump has said on the campaign trail, wherein Trump has suggested that Taiwan needs to pay more for U.S. protection, right? We all know he's very transactional, and he said, okay, if Taiwan wants us to come to their defense, they need to pay more. But here is his Secretary of State nominee saying, no, we need to do everything we can to protect Taiwan at all costs, and also the Philippines, because the United States has commitments to them, especially the Philippines, which obviously is a mutual defense ally, right? So if you put it together with the fact that the Secretary of Defense nominee, Pete Hegseth, who had his confirmation hearing just the other day, which is a lot more contentious than what Marco Rubio went through, Pete Hegseth is also a known China hawk, meaning they're very, you know, all about containing China. As you said, you know, the signs point to greater engagement and support for the Philippines and the rest of the Indo-Pacific in general, rather than less.
I hope it doesn't mean greater conflict, the greater chances for conflict,
That's
right?
the other
because
thing.
the more aggressive you are,
right,
the more encounters you may get.
That's
but
right.
I think that answers a lot of our questions prior to the elections, the U.S. elections, right? On what will change.
Yeah.
Right.
And it affirms all that has been said here on the show, like from the U.S. ambassador to the Philippine ambassador to the U.S.
Right, which is that
told us,
the engagement is going to continue to stay strong, and the commitment is ironclad and all of that stuff. But you're right, though, that's a very good point. How far will the rhetoric take them? Because already he's not even in position yet. He's already blasting China, calling it dangerous and the most potent adversary, and saying that China cheated its way to becoming a superpower. Those are inflammatory words, and the question now is, you know, how will that relationship play out, and who gets caught up in that?
Well, it is days till President Trump gets inaugurated on Monday, right?
Yeah.
And things have already shifted, especially in the conflict in Israel and Gaza.
Yes.
Actually, speaking of that, outgoing U.S. President Joe Biden is now winding down his time in the White House with a farewell speech that sounded like a parting shot to his successor, Donald Trump. Speaking from the Oval Office, Biden warned Americans about looming abuses of power. He sees an oligarchy taking shape in the USA.
Warn the country of some things that give me great concern. This is a dangerous concentration, and that's a dangerous concentration of power in the hands of a very few ultra-wealthy people. And the dangerous consequences if their abuse of power is left unchecked. Today, an oligarchy is taking shape in America of extreme wealth, power, and influence that literally threatens our entire democracy, our basic rights and freedoms, and a fair shot for everyone to get ahead. Americans are being buried under an avalanche of misinformation and disinformation, enabling the abuse of power. The free press is crumbling. Editors are disappearing. Social media is giving up on fact-checking. The truth is smothered by lies told for power and for profit. We must hold the social platforms accountable to protect our children, our families, and our very democracy from the abuse of power. We need to amend the Constitution to make clear that no president is immune from crimes that he or she commits while in office. The president's power is not limited. It's not absolute, and it shouldn't be.
Biden also took credit for the ceasefire and hostage deal that was struck between Israel and Hamas. This development is a pause to the devastating war in the Gaza Strip that has killed thousands and displaced millions of people.
After 8 months of nonstop negotiation, my administration, a ceasefire and a hostage deal has been reached by Israel and Hamas, the elements of which I laid out in great detail in May of this year. This plan was developed and negotiated by my team and will be largely implemented by the incoming administration. That's why I told my team to keep the incoming administration fully informed, because that's how it should be, working together as Americans.
In his farewell address, President Biden also thanked his wife, his vice president, and the American people. The 82-year-old Biden will formally hand over the U.S. presidency to Donald Trump on January 20.
It's been the highest honor of my life to lead you as Commander-in-Chief. And of course to Kamala and our incredible partner, historic Vice President. My deepest appreciation to our amazing First Lady who's with me in the Oval today. For our entire family. My eternal thanks to you, the American people. After 50 years of public service, I give you my word. I still believe in the idea for which this nation stands. A nation where the strength of our institutions and the character of our people matter and must endure. Now it's your turn to stand guard. May you all be the keeper of the flame. May you keep the faith. I love America. You love it too. God bless you all. And may God protect our troops. Thank you for this great honor.
Biden's successor, U.S. President-elect Donald Trump, will have a lot on his plate immediately after his inauguration. Right off the bat, he's expected at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, which he will be attending virtually, after all. Trump has attended the forum in person twice during his first term. This year's Davos gathering has the theme Collaboration for the Intelligent Age, which highlights efforts to address global issues like climate change, economic uncertainty, and conflicts. The 55th annual meeting is happening amid a tense and complex geopolitical backdrop. Organizers say nearly 3,000 participants from over 130 countries will take part in the annual meeting.
We're taking another quick break, but up next, the government is pilot testing a national ID for persons with disabilities. What good will it do? We speak to National Council on Disability Affairs Chief Glenda Relova next. Keep it here on One News.
Welcome back. You are still on the Big Story on One News. The National Council on Disability Affairs is coming up with a unified identification system for persons with disabilities, or PWDs, to stop the proliferation of fake IDs. The target is to have a universal ID design nationwide, which will be embedded with biometric data, a QR code, and the owner's signature as security features. The target pilot testing is from January up to June this year. PWD IDs entitle owners to a 28% discount and value-added tax exemption on certain goods and services. Currently, these are being issued by city or municipal social welfare and development offices.
Let's get updates from Glenda Relova, Executive Director of the National Council on Disability Affairs. Magandang gabi. Welcome to the Big Story.
Hello. Good evening, ladies. Magandang gabi po.
Hi, Glenda. Okay, this is not the first time that we're hearing the PWID being abused. It was in the news recently, but it was also in the news some years back. Just, to be able to understand, why do you think this will be an effective solution, having a national ID for PWDs? And how, in which ways is it being abused, apart from those who don't have disabilities not really having a disability signing up for that ID?
You're correct that there was a proliferation of fake IDs, and based on the last public hearing by the Senate Ways and Means, it was determined that around 88.2 billion is being like lost from the government taxes. So this is because that there are proliferation of fake IDs, the physical ID itself, and sometimes there are real IDs, but there are no disabilities. So I think the main reason for this is we have currently different designs of IDs being issued by the local government units. So when we have a unified ID system, it's easier for us to determine the authenticity of the physical ID card.
Does that change the granting body, or will it still be the LGU in charge of this?
Well, the LGU will still be the one who's going to accept all the applications and then verifications. Since the persons with disabilities first contact is with the local government unit, it is LGU wherein they will submit the requirements such as the medical diagnosis and then the reason of their disability as well as the application form. And the LGU will also approve. It is just that the NCBA through the DSWD as the chairperson who will print the ID. And then after printing, we will give it back to the LGU for them to distribute to the person's disability.
Pero Ms. Glenda, hindi po ba yung screening process po talaga yung problema dito sa proliferation of fake IDs and not really the design or kumbaga yung lack of uniformity nitong mga IDs? Kasi if you have a unified ID but the screening process is still the same, meron pa rin mga tao who could take advantage of this and apply for a PWID. Sabihin nila may disability sila, they'll get a medical certificate kung kaibigan nila yung doktor. But is there a way to improve yun, yung screening process po?
I believe that the screening process has already been strengthened. The NCBA is working closely with the Disability Affairs officers, and we have provided them technical assistance and capability building on how to assess. And they are very strict ngayon, yung talagang hinahanapan nila ng medical diagnosis. And they even call the doctors na nagpa-provide ng medical diagnosis. So in terms of screening, pag talagang dumaan siya sa mga PDAW offices, masasabi natin na authentic tsaka legitimate and validated naman yung claim ng persons with disability. Ang talagang nahirapan lang po tayo is yung mga physical ID na ibinibenta ng mga fake.
How many, by your count, do we have that are entitled to PWIDs at this point nationwide?
Currently po, yung doon sa Philippine Registry of Persons with Disability is around 1,935,000 na po yung mga nakaregister sa atin na merong PWD IDs po.
Ms. Glenda, pag sinabing PWD, ano yung mga disability na kasama dyan? Kasama po ba dyan pag sinabi nating may grado kang mataas na mataas, are you immediately eligible to apply for a PWD ID? And which disabilities are often abused?
Yung malabo lang yung mata mo, hindi po siya ko-correspond kaagad as a disability. There must be a certain measurement like 500 pataas po yung mata or yung partial blindness na po na tinatawag natin. And the most commonly abused disability ngayon is yung psychosocial since it is non-apparent. Pero we also have to consider na after the pandemic, totoo naman po talaga na madaming nagkaroon sa psychosocial disability. And if we look at the statistics ng mga apparent or yung may mga physical disability na nakikita natin by our naked eye, at pinagsama-sama po natin yung non-apparent like the mental, the learning disability, the psychosocial, mas madami po yung non-apparent. Opo.
Okay.
Ang dami na po kasi nating ID, baka magkalituhan lang, ano? Pero saan ba nagpapagawa nun?
Sa recto.
Sa recto. Oo, sana kahit yun muna, step 1 muna, tatanggalin muna natin yung mga counterfeit IDs. But in the meantime, thank you so much for shedding light on that issue for us. We have Glenda Relova, NCDA Executive Director. And that's it for the show tonight.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.
Thanks for tuning in. Have a good night.